So, all right.
Okay.
Well, let's go. And I'm just going to ask you to introduce yourself,
Okay.
and then I'll ask you some questions. So, and
Yeah, and I'm
is
going
it
to
okay
try
to?
to give you sound bites here because I know I'm
Yeah,
around more.
perfect. Thank you. And it's okay to use this for on my website and
Yes,
marketing and stuff.
absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So go ahead and introduce yourself and share what kind of boat you have.
Hey, I'm Rod Johnson, and I am a 1 year boater, new boater. So July of last year, we of 2020 rather, we purchased a Harris Solstice 230. It has a 200 Merc on it. First time boat buyer, definitely, trying to figure out what boat. So that was obviously a tri-tune boat. Looked at your information and helped a ton on trying to figure out what to get that would work for the needs of our family.
And once you had the boat, the best boat captain on the water training, the best pontoon captain on the water training is something that I offered you just to get your unbiased review and gave you a free access to it. But what was your experience having boated for about a year, I think, up to that point, and then you got that information? How did it impact your boating outings?
I would say that I wish I had had that info before the first time we went in the water. That is a for sure. So I would say that we didn't do thousands of dollars of damage. We didn't hurt anybody, but we were definitely easy to spot as new boaters, and launches and recoveries were not smooth. Um, Lots of anxiety, and I think we would have had a lot less of that stuff if we'd have seen your information first. It was super helpful. And I can say it on the backside, having experienced it, how you're so on target with that information. It's very comprehensive, from courtesy, from knowledge, boating, navigation, and then the actual operation. This is stuff you don't get in the manuals that come in your packet when you leave a dealership or a driveway.
Yeah, so you bought from a new dealer, and talk about the type of water that you boat on, and how that did it work for you on the water that you boat on.
So we do inland lakes. We're in the Raleigh area, and there are two or three different reservoirs, state park opportunities. Carr Lake is where we actually go the most. Actually, to be fair, that's the only place we've gone right now. We think we've discovered, it's funny, you keep thinking, is there something better? And from what I can tell, I've got it pretty good at that particular place. Very spacious boat ramp, lots of parking, unless the bass fisher people are there, which we try to go on weekdays anyway to avoid that. But very large lake. Um, and we just have a great time on an inland lake. So it's not super rough, although we've been out there with wind, and I can tell you an inland lake can so this boat will do about 40 miles an hour, and you can get enough chop on an inland lake that you can't do 40 miles an hour, or you can attempt to do it, and your passengers will tell you to slow down because you can get some big chop. But for the most part, I would call it, fairly mild in terms of water, um, clearly protected, but very large, and lots of opportunities to do whatever you want: fish, cruise, water sports, whatever.
What, as you went through the program, what did you find most helpful? What did you find most enlightening and valuable for your boating fun, safety, enjoyment, whatever it is?
Well, I think it is not intuitive that a boat is not a car. I think most people think a boat is a car. Well, remember, a car is contacted to the ground. A boat is not. It is, so it doesn't really have real brakes. There's no positive stopping. Yes, you can reverse a motor, but that is not the same thing as braking with a car. It is propelled from the rear. That is definitely different with what you do with steering. You only steer when you have propulsion. And I know these are old topics for people that may be listening to this, but for a new boater, you don't realize any of that stuff. And that is the things that are going on when you are panicking at the dock and you can't figure out what to do, is because you don't fundamentally understand what is going on. And those things you cover. You go from the baby steps of that kind of stuff to what I call the money move, which is the pontoon pivot. So being able to pivot the boat in slow speed, 360 degrees without it moving forward or aft. If you can get that move down, and it is not difficult, you just got to understand how the boat works. But if you can get that move down, you can do about anything in any dock, anywhere. And that one was a super valuable. I'd never thought about that maneuver, and it makes so much sense. So that's the money move for me.
Yeah, that pivot, I appreciate that. What about the style of teaching, the way the information was delivered? How did that work, being in video for you and me not actually being on the boat with you?
Oh, I think it was super helpful, and I love that you have the multiple angles. I mean, I've covered a bunch of different YouTube resources, and it's only the single person perspective. And you've got multiple cameras with multiple views of what is going on. So you can see what you're doing at the console or the helm. You can see what the bow of the boat's doing. You can see what the stern of the boat's doing. You know, you've got more of a wide angle view where you can kind of see what the boat is doing, but you've got multiple cameras going on. And I think that's super helpful because it gives you a feel of what's happening all around you. And, you know, the thing about boating that I think is maybe more true, probably shouldn't be, but I think it is, versus cars is what was in my head, is there's this 360-degree opportunity for good or bad to occur in boating. About the only thing maybe not happening is dropping stuff from the sky, but there are things that are coming, either coming to you or you're coming to them from 360 degrees. And that is what is very different about boating versus driving a car. And you cover a lot of things that make that, I think, safer. I think it may make it more effective and a whole lot more enjoyable for your passengers. And that kind of information, it's one of those kind of things that, yeah, I get it, but until you really think about it and get in a boat and do it, and then start being aware of it, those are good things to know before you start doing that stuff. And they would be very helpful to the new boater.
So if you were talking to one of your best friends or somebody that was buying a boat, that hadn't operated a boat before, didn't have much experience, was maybe nervous about the getting out there, they were excited about boating, but nervous about the operation, what suggestions would you have?
Well, I would say that the best pontoon, if they were doing a pontoon, best pontoon boat captain series would be good to look at. I know you have other boats that you do that. So best captain on the water, boating captain on the water would be useful. Those are the things that are not going to be in those three manuals that you get from the dealer or the driveway, you know, the trailer, the motor, and the boat. Assuming you get any of those three, you're not going to get operation kind of information. And you can play the game, and a lot of people do it to varying degrees of success if I'll figure it out. But in the meantime, I think the joy, you know, when I think about what your videos do, I think it really compresses the time that you can get from newbie to really enjoying boating. And it makes that time much shorter, makes you much safer, more effective. And I think it really lessens the risk that you're going to either get somebody hurt or do expensive damage to your new boat or new to you boat.
Yeah.
And either of those things can happen because boating is just significantly different than driving a car. And I think the average person thinks, hey, if I can drive a car and drive a boat, and I would say you can, but you can't do it as well because all of the things you take for granted in a car, not very many of those are happening in boating.
Yeah. Think back to that first outing that you and your wife took your brand new pontoon out. What kind of emotions were going through you at that time?
A ton of anxiety on, it was not an elegant backup to the boat ramp. I think we had a decent launch, although even then, this particular dock was not smooth all the way down. The pylons that held the dock up were on the outside of the dock, so they had those rubber things that wrap around the pylon. Well, another 30 or 40 feet, there'd be another pylon and another one of those things. So you couldn't just back the boat out and then scoot up against the dock. You had to kind of maneuver it away from the rectangular pylon covering and then into almost like the parking spot. That's where the rear end is going in one direction and the front end is going in another direction. And you've got throttle in forward for throttle in reverse. And the confidence, you can hear the lack of confidence in throttle input when you're at the dock. And we experienced that. So those kind of things, I think the toughest part, when you're out on the water and you're going forward, that's the easy part. It's the slow stuff in launching and recovery where you will figure out those skills need to come up the curve very quickly. And those are the places that, cause opportunities for a lot of anxiety, a lot of yelling. And you're just trying to, and everybody wants to do the right thing. They just don't know how, because the moment has happened and they don't have the fundamental understanding of what to do. And so mistakes get made, wrong inputs get done, and the thing just starts kind of spiraling out of control. And I wouldn't say that you can watch your videos and immediately be perfect at that, but I would say you have the fundamental understanding of making the stress level and anxiety go down. But to be fair, you in your videos talk about how to practice. And I think the word boating and practice probably have not been used in the same sentence a lot. and you talk about how to practice so that your anxiety and your anxiety goes down, your skill level goes up.
And that's in the 8 building blocks. Would you say
Yep.
that was the most valuable? We'll talk about those 8 the building block section.
Yep.
And
well, that's what I meant by your video goes from crawling to walking to running. And the building blocks that you're talking about is the crawling part. And you absolutely, I think, nail it with that. Those are the things that give you fundamental understanding of how to operate the boat. And if you get those down, you're going to do fine. And your anxiety level is going to be low. Everybody's going to think you're a star. And your passengers are going to be, much more appreciative. And the whole boating day is just going to go well. I mean, it's terrible to go out, have a great time, and come back and have a train wreck. And unfortunately, a lot of people go through that, and they ultimately, over time, through a lot of school of hard knocks, literally, they may get there. And that's what I meant. But I think the genius of what you're doing is it compresses that amount of time to get from don't know to let's go enjoy the boat and the boating lifestyle. And it helps tremendously.
Perfect. Well, Rod, I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate your advice. Any last words? Any last thoughts before we go?
I do have a good one, and I've learned from some folks in the boating industry this isn't normal. And so my best tip would be, especially if you have a spouse or significant other, is divide the workload. Get one of you to do the truck and the trailer and get the other one to deal with the boat. And a lot of people may go, I don't know if I want to do that. Just keep pushing through and learn with your video stuff. And you will be surprised how smooth that makes the entire launching, recovery, the whole boating thing, if you can break that up and not be just one person trying to do it all, it also creates skills that in the event there was an emergency, somebody would be able to know what to do if they don't normally do it. But I would divide that workload. I would have somebody on the boat and somebody in the truck and trailer, and maybe you switch them, every now and then. And that may not be something you do all the time, but I think that would be one of the keys. And if you watch your videos and go through that, both of you can figure out what you need to do, and you're going to be a pro at it. And it will serve you well, I think, in your boating lifestyle.
Well, perfect, Rod. Thank you very much. I appreciate all your input and being a part of this. It makes what I do even more fun, knowing that people out there are getting good value from it and making memories on the water. So,
well, I appreciate the effort and energy that you've done, and this video series was super. I thought it was absolutely on point, and I wish you the best in being able to get it to folks who need it, because there's a lot of need out there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of ignorance, and people think they'll figure it out, and they may, but boy, there sure is a lot of misery on that journey before they do.
That's for sure. All right, thanks, and have a good one.
You too, buddy. Bye.
All right, bye.